But look, speaking of where they're going to go, speaking of where they're going to get picked up, let's go ahead and go back to a year ago. We mentioned it earlier. There was an elite run on wide receivers that just got, they were just all made contributions. You had the Garrett Wilsons, you had Jahan Dotson, Olave, even James Williams came out there and did his thing. Mechie got picked up. Obviously, he got the injury. But there are so many wide receivers that got picked up, and not only got picked up, but made immediate impacts on their team. Last year, coming out from where we looked at it, who was your top 5 wide receivers from last year that maybe not how they got drafted, but just in production and how they did?
Yeah, so number 5 for me is Drake London. Mm-hmm. Had a solid year. Obviously, he was the first guy taken. Yeah, it was solid. Didn't have good quarterback play. Yes. Let's see what happens with their quarterback situation this year and see if he can improve on that. I'll say solid year. Number 4 for me was Christian Watson. He was Aaron Rodgers' number 1. I know people say Lazard, but Watson was that go-to guy.
Watson.
You saw it week 1 when they played Minnesota, and play 1, Rodgers ain't going to Lazard. He's taking that deep shot to Watson, and unfortunately he dropped it.
Right.
But Rodgers went to him early and often, and once he got settled in, man, he was a difference maker. Yep. He's number 4 for me. Number 3, Sid's going to love this one. It's George Pickens. How he slid to the middle of the second round, I have no idea.
Yeah.
This was my number 2 receiver going into last year's draft. Part of it was a little bit of bias wanting to push the Ohio State guys down, but
you wouldn't be you if you didn't do that. Come on. Yeah. You've been nice enough, all right?
I have the Buckeye number 1 this year, so I learned my lesson. But yeah, Pickens he's a dog, man. So many elite catches this year. Just highlight reel plays. Pickett to Pickens is going to be a nasty combo for years to come.
Yes.
They got their guy, man. But 2 and 1 are the 2 Ohio State guys. Mm-hmm. I got Olave number 2. Again, pretty poor quarterback play last year.
Right.
But Olave still was a difference maker, man. He was solid down the field. I can't wait to see him and Derek Carr go at it.
Man, yes.
It's gonna be fireworks, man.
Absolutely.
He's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. Number 1, it's got to be the reigning offensive rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson.
Awesome. Yep.
And if he gets Aaron Rodgers, look out. This is gonna be. It's going to be a number 1 receiver in fantasy. Like, this is easily. You're going to get a number 1 receiver. He's an absolute weapon out there, can do it all. Short, deep, excellent route runner, great hands. He was far and away the number 1 for me this year.
Oh, I love that. My switch would be number 5. And it is because we know where he got picked last year. I love Drake London and everything. But like you said, the production left me wanting a little bit. You know what I mean? And then I have to go home and be biased, and I'm going to put number 5, Jahan Dotson. In my opinion.
I won't argue with you on that.
In my opinion, before his injury, he was on track to be the rookie of the year. He was right up there with it. He had 4 touchdowns when we had Carson Wentz in there. Got hurt, came back, and then was able to get himself 2 or 3 more touchdowns. And this is behind Curtis Samuel. This is behind Terry McLaurin. So this is what we talk about. We talk about putting a guy in the slot. So I absolutely love that. Who was your 4?
Watson.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page with that one. And the only reason I put Watson ahead of Jahan Dotson is because of how he was able to play later in the season.
Yeah.
Everybody looks at that first play of the game without really looking at the fact that, like you said, Aaron Rodgers didn't go to the guy that he's known for several years. He went to the rookie. And
which doesn't happen with Rodgers.
Exactly. And albeit, yes, that he dropped it and it looked like, he punished them because they weren't on the same page for a while. But once they clicked, night. Once they clicked, it was over. When he had the 3-touchdown game where he's just becoming a fantasy football elite wide receiver towards the end of the year, you're just looking at it like, woo. Let's not forget, the Packers started to come back into it. What, you beat them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They started to come
if
back.
they won, they were in the playoffs that game.
Right. And Christian Watson was a huge part of that. Our three is the same. I can't shout out to Sid. I can't go anywhere else than George Pickens. And if anything, the fact that Matt Canada was there, as their OC, so they weren't getting it. And the fact that you had Pickett and Trubisky throwing to him, and then the line wasn't great. There was so many other factors, and still you wanted to watch the Steelers play just so you might see that one amazing catch by George Pickens from Kenny Pickett. So, I can't go anywhere else with that. And the number 1 and 2, you're absolutely right. They're Ohio State boys. Olave, shout out to the Saints. I was in New Orleans for the draft last year. I may or may not have traded some crawfish for that pick. We worked it out, but we both got solid wide receivers. Hey, and Olave, and he, like you said, he did it with Jameis Winston. He did it with Andy Dalton. You know what I mean? Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
These are the guys he had thrown in the ball, and still he was elite. And then number 1, I mean, you have to. Like, I don't understand when you have a guy that has quarterbacks that just aren't on par and he's still contributing. I mean, think about right now who was quarterbacking in New York this year. Yeah, what? Joe Flacco.
If you look at QB rating,
yeah.
For all, I think it was like 75, 76 quarterbacks that qualified. Those were the 3 worst quarterbacks he had throwing him the ball.
Oh my God.
Like,
it was rough. Yeah.
And you might get Aaron Rodgers now?
Right. Good.
I know Rodgers didn't play great, but
he'll be fine.
Aaron Rodgers.
Right. And he's getting Breece Hall, Michael Carter's got the wide receivers. He has the line. Oh, good gracious. And rightfully so. Hopefully the Jets can finally get out of this misery. You know, hey, Jets, Detroit, Washington, all of us on the up and up.
Yeah.
New day. It's a new day. Let's go.
Love to see it.
Yo, but yeah, you have to go with the rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson, with who he had thrown to him. And I remember mid-season, I'm like, oh yeah, Garrett Wilson is on the Jets. But they were so bad at quarterback that it was just like, but
they were hard to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're still balling. And shout out to him. Shout out to those Ohio State receivers. But yeah, that's my top 5. Not too much different, but I had to show Jahan Dotson some love because he showed up early. And I mean, there was one play that did it for me. We're playing the Giants after he gets hurt. Heineke throws him a pass. He catches it. He's running. He's starting to he was on the outside, kind of coming in towards the middle. You know, he's about to get just destroyed. This safety has just eyes on him and comes right in. And what we know in NCAA 14 as the circle button, he sits there and puts the foot in the ground and does a whoop, a little whirly bird spin. And you can just hear the announcers like, oh, he's going to get, oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh, he spun out of that for the touchdown. Are you kidding me? Like that.
It was very reminiscent of that Braxton Miller spin when he was at Ohio State.
Right.
The one that just, when you think of spin moves, you think of that one, you think of the one Jahan Dotson pull off. Yeah. It was an elite level spin move. Like
it was amazing. And it was one of those where we were just like, oh, because we were losing in that game. We're just like, oh, here we go. And it's like, oh, new life. Yeah. Now we ended up tying that game.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that was the one you tied, right?
Yeah. But still, shout out to Jahan Dotson. Because again, we're talking about, who did he have as quarterback? He had Carson for most of the season. Shout out to Taylor Heineke. But when Carson was in there, Carson Wentz was finding Jahan Dotson. Taylor Heineke has his guys. He has Samuel. He has Terry McLaurin, and he's going to give those guys a shot. And sometimes, especially when Heineke first got back in there, or when Jahan Dotson got back from injury and Heineke was in there, it took a while for them to kind of get on the same page, So that, I think that played a part. But still, you just the ability. And then you go back and look at Jahan Dotson in college. And you think about who was throwing to him in college. Sean Clifford.
Yeah.
Gutsy, gritty. But as my guy Will told me, Not the best. Penn State ain't like him too much. He was there for 80 years, so
they didn't have anyone good enough to push him out. That's all I can say about
there it
that.
is.
He was
there
good enough to start for 6 years. So
exactly. So yeah, so hey, I love what all these guys bring to the table. And hey, I'm gonna go with the question I always ask you before we get close to ending this, Mr. Irrelevant. Who is your Mr. Irrelevant wide receiver? Do you have one?
Man,
yeah, I know.
We listed like 20 guys. I like your boy Antoine from North Carolina. There, if he's still there at that point, that's a solid pickup. And I think just with like you said, the list of receivers that we named off today, you're gonna get an absolute difference maker there, and I think he could be that guy.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So, hey, there it is. That's our last year's top 5 wide receivers. Stay tuned this year to see who's going to be that guy, who's going to be the Mr. Relevant, who's going to be the top guys, and who's going to make a contribution to your team that you might not have seen coming.